In 1980, a movie came out called The Empire Strikes Back, and I went to see it. I was 5 years old. A New Hope came out. So I'm giving away my age. So if you want to do the math, you'll figure it out. A New Hope came out when I was 2. I did see it in the theater, apparently, but I don't remember it. My parents brought me. But I do remember Empire. I was just blown away by this movie. And the scene that gripped me so fully, it wasn't the battle on Hoth was amazing. I mean, if we don't know this movie, go home and watch it. The battle on Hoth was amazing. The lightsaber duels were amazing. But to me, what spoke to me was this scene on Dagobah, where Luke learns from Yoda how to be a Jedi. It just spoke to me. And I left the movie theater pretending to be a Jedi. And I was like, and I just was filled with this desire to learn the Force and to use it to like move objects. And boy, did I try. I tried to move objects. I started with something small. I was like, maybe a penny. I couldn't do it. And the lightsaber duels and all of that, it was just something that just spoke to me. It was just a very profound experience for me. And what I knew deep down somewhere was that the Force was real. It was like the Force is real. And it was something that I started believing in. And if you can believe this, the older I got, the more I believed in it. And what I mean is, I still believe in the Force today. Because I think what was happening in this movie, and there's, of course, all of the sequels and the prequels and the other content that has been created by this universe, but this idea of the Force has been had a powerful effect on me, and I continue to believe in it today. And you would think, well, you've grown up, Matt. What's going on? Why are you still believing in this, this fantasy world? And that's because I think this movie was touching on something much deeper than just this story, this imaginary sort of world and this Jedi order and all of these things. Because what I think I was experiencing in that time when I was 5, and I continue to experience, was the power of myth. And I think myth in our sort of common vernacular kind of gets a bad rap because we think of something, we're like, oh, that's a myth. A myth is a lie. And that's not true. That's not what a myth is. I mean, we use that word sometimes that way, but it's not a lie. A myth is a system of symbols and narratives that point to an experience that is beyond expression. And I'm going to appeal to Joseph Campbell, the great mythologist, who studied myth in all cultures. And he said, I'm going to give you a few definitions. He sort of defines myth in a couple of different ways, and I think they help us understand what's going on with the Force. Mythology is not a lie. Mythology is poetry. It is metaphorical. It has been well said that mythology is the penultimate truth. Penultimate because the ultimate cannot be put into words. So it is the penultimate truth, not the ultimate truth, because the ultimate cannot be put into words. It is beyond words. Mythology pitches the mind to what can be known but not told. And I think that's what I was experiencing at 5 years old, that there was something that could be known but could not be told other than through stories, metaphors, symbols, characters. Luke Skywalker. He goes on to say, myths are clues to the spiritual potentialities of the human life. And then he says one more thing that I think is really interesting. He doesn't say them all in a row. I love Joseph Campbell, and I read a lot of his stuff. But he also says this, which I think is fascinating. Mythology is other people's religion. Think about that for a second. Mythology is other people's religion. When you look at another culture, another set of stories, another set of mythologies, you think of that as myths, mythology. But The religion you were grew up in, you believe in, and you treat as the truth, right? That's because it feels like it's something that's woven into your identity. But somebody else's, that's just a myth. But I want you to start to think about mythology and religion, spiritual practice, in a more holistic sort of way. That all of these myths, all of these stories, because every religion is built on story at some point. There are stories of, the Buddha, of Jesus, of, the gods and goddesses that formed this world. And they are all myths. And what makes them beautiful is not that they are not true, but they are more than true. They point to something beyond words. And the question of whether it's factual or not, did this actually occur? Did Moses actually part the Red Sea? Did Jesus walk on water? The factuality of that is actually irrelevant, because it's pointing to a human experience that is beyond words. And that's a little bit what's happening with, not a little bit, a lot of it, is what happened to me when I was 5 years old. And this is part of the reason that Joseph Campbell says that artists are the seers and prophets of their century. Because often it's artists that express the inexpressible, that help us experience, that give us portals to what can be known but cannot be told. And there's something very powerful there. And I believe that this mythology that was created by George Lucas is something that can really be a true guidance in our lives. And you're like, well, Matt, come on. Yoda? He's a puppet. That's true. It's a story. And it didn't actually happen. And yet, the story is true. So I want to talk a little bit about what it means to live like a Jedi. That's what we're here to discuss today. What does it mean to live like a Jedi? And I'm not gonna explore the entire Star Wars canon. It's too large. It's quite detailed and large and massive. I can't even explore everything that Yoda and Obi-Wan taught. But we're gonna get a few nuggets and see if we can incorporate them into our spiritual path so that we can have that sense of guidance. So first, let's talk about what the Force is. And Obi-Wan in A New Hope, the first one, when I was 2 years old, I didn't follow it as well when I was 2, defines the Force this way: the Force is what gives a Jedi their power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together. I'm going to say that again. It binds the galaxy together. And I want you to think about that in terms of your own mythologies, your own religion, your own spiritual set of experiences, stories, symbols. And I'm going to suggest one. If any of you grew up Christian, you talked about the Spirit, right? Probably. The Holy Ghost. Well, let's translate it for a second. The Spirit, the Force. Let's substitute the word Spirit for Force. The Spirit is what gives a human their power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together. I'm going to suggest that both work, because both are not meant to be factually true. They are pointing to an experience that can be known but not told. Something that can't quite be defined. And that's the journey that we're on, because the point of a spiritual path, the point of spiritual practice, is not to be able to talk about it. It's not to be able to, know all of the scriptures and know all of the stories. That's not the point of it. The point is that those mythologies, those stories, those symbols point us to an experience of the infinite, of the eternal, the divine, the numinous. The things that make us feel how big we are in spite of how small we are. How connected we are in spite of how alone we sometimes feel. And that's the power of the Force. So let's learn a little bit about how to live like a Jedi and see if we can bring more of the Force into your life. One of the first lessons that Luke learns is actually in A New Hope. We'll spend a little time in A New Hope, the first of the Star Wars installments, which is really the fourth. You know, the whole number system with the Star Wars is all sort of out of whack. But when Luke is on the Millennium Falcon and he's trying to learn how to use a lightsaber, and there's a little floating droid that shoots little laser beams at him, and he's trying to block them. And that's part of his training that Obi-Wan's doing. And Luke just can't get it, can't do it, right? And Obi-Wan says to him, let go your conscious self and act on instinct. And then I love this. Stretch out with your feelings. Do you hear that? And it's just, this little training thing. It's not even like integral to the plot of New Hope in a significant way. It's setting up some things, right? But he drops this nugget. Stretch out with your feelings. Because I think a lot of times when we're looking for guidance, we think that guidance is going to be something smart. Some idea, some way that we're going to be able to think our way into the right path. And most often that's not the way to do it. It's actually our feelings that guide us. When we say, okay, this is something I value, I treasure, I love. How do I get more of that into my life? And then let those stretch out with your feelings and let those feelings guide you on the path that brings more of that into your life. I think that's a very powerful thing. And so you have to let go of your conscious self just a little bit, or maybe a lot. You have to, as Yoda says, unlearn what you have learned. Because we have this, we've been taught all through our lives how important it is to think. Think before you act. Yeah, that's often a good idea, but not always. Sometimes you have to feel before you act. Or, as I try to teach my actors, the actors that I train, to act before you think. That you act upon the instinct, the impulse, because sometimes it's truer than all the thoughts that you can figure out. If you can be connected to the Force, to the Spirit, and let Spirit guide you. This lesson that Obi-Wan gave Luke in this time, one of the things he said is that Jedi can feel the Force flowing through him. And that's a very powerful idea as well. Have you ever heard of flow state? When somebody gets into a flow state and they're working so well, so like in the zone, right? Have you ever been in that flow state? It feels like there's something larger than you, not controlling your actions, but guiding you. That's what we're talking about, tapping into this force that binds the galaxy together and allows you to find your pathway to bliss, to the things that make you happy. Not just pleasure. I mean, pleasure is one thing, but bliss lasts. Happiness has duration, right? Pleasure is, well, a piece of cake. That's great, but a good meal that sits with you and nourishes you for hours, maybe even until tomorrow, right? There's something different about that. And so that's what we want to use so when you stretch out with your feelings, look for the things that will lead you to those wonderful, choice, lovely pieces of bliss. All right. The other thing that I think this is very related to is the idea of living in the now. And you've heard me talk about this a lot. Eckhart Tolle is one of my favorite authors, The Power of Now. Well, Jedis understand the power of now. Yoda understood the power of now. In fact, when he was discussing things with the spirit of Obi-Wan Kenobi, He's talking about Luke, and he says this about Luke. All his life has he looked away, to the future, to the horizon, never his mind on where he was. I'll spare you my Yoda impression, but never his mind on where he was, what he was doing. Yoda is expressing this important idea of being here now, in the moment, because that's all you ever really have. Every memory that you have in your life was built in a now. And everything that you will ever do, every memory you will ever create, will happen in a future now. But the present is all you ever really have. We are here now. And it's taught in many other disciplines, many other places. A lot of spiritual traditions focus on, bringing yourself into the now. Spiritual traditions like baseball. What do you think it means to keep your eye on the ball? Be in the now. Of course you want to hit that home run. And yes, you want to have that sense of direction, that sense of where you want to go. But when you step up to the plate, you must watch the ball. Otherwise, there is no chance of hitting that home run. This became very clear to me in a different sport. My daughter does parkour, which is sort of like jumping and doing gymnastics and different, in the playground of a cityscape, right? And one of the things that they train, and I've started training with her too. I take classes with her now. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. They call them precision jumps. And this is where you have a railing or just a skinny wall or something like that, and you're jumping from one railing, a railing, small, from one railing and landing on another railing and balancing there. Or a stride, which is you jump from one, you land on another, and then jump to another and another until you eventually land in a precision jump somewhere else. And often these railings are different heights, kind of scary sometimes. And the coach that was working with us gave an important piece of advice. Look at the spot where you want your foot to land. In other words, keep your eye on the ball. Because she said, if you miss the jump you're on, you'll never make the next one. In fact, you'll probably wipe out pretty hard, and it'll hurt. So keep your eye on the ball. Stay in the present. All right, let's talk about another lesson. One of my favorite episodes in there, sort of sequences in Empire Strikes Back, is this training with Yoda. Like I said, that was the part, more than anything, as a 5-year-old, that was the thing that spoke to me most. And there's this amazing sequence that teaches us about size and belief. We're going to talk about size and belief. And let me set this up in case you don't know the story. And if you do, just relive it with me. Luke flew to Dagobah. That's the planet where Yoda lives. And landed his X-Wing fighter, his spaceship. He landed his X-Wing fighter in the swamp. And it was fine until it wasn't. And it sunk below the water of the swamp. It just kind of sunk in. It just started sinking. And Luke was kind of freaked out because he was like, that's my ticket off this planet. That's the only way out. And so he was all upset about it. And Yoda suggested that Luke, lift it with the Force. And of course, Luke says, I can't, it's too big, right? And this is one of Yoda's famous lines, right? He's like, I'll try. That's what Luke says. And Yoda says, what does he say? There is no try, only do. Yes. Do or do not. My bad. I messed it up. All right. Anybody on the internet, if you're going to make some comments, you can now. Do or do not, there is no try. I reversed it because I put it in I didn't put it in Yoda speak. Right? So Luke tries and he can't. And he says, I can't do it, it's too big. And then Yoda says another nugget. Size matters not. Judge me by my size, do you? And well, you should not. For my ally is the Force. And a powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. There it is, it binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. And then Luke says, you want the impossible. And he walks away in a huff. What does Yoda do? Do you know what Yoda does? Yoda takes a moment, prepares, and then lifts the entire X-Wing fighter. Now Yoda's like 3 feet tall. Lifts the entire X-Wing fighter up into the air with the Force and sets it safely on dry ground. And Luke says, I don't believe it. And Yoda replies, that is why you fail. Okay? Do you see that? Size didn't matter. It doesn't matter that Yoda is a tiny little being. And it doesn't matter that the X-Wing fighter was hugely bigger than him. What mattered was he had his allies working for him. The entire galaxy was lifting that X-Wing fighter with him. Size doesn't matter. And if you don't believe, you will fail. That's the other lesson that we gain from this, right? Because think about it. As you are going on your journey, on your path, if you do not believe in that path, you won't even take the first step. Hear that for a second. If you don't believe it's possible, why would you even bother taking the first step? The belief is required. And then I want to mention one more thing. This is like sort of the most important sort of set of lessons I think that Yoda ever taught. Because he says, luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. And I want you to think about that for a second. Luminous beings are we. Based on Einstein's equations, E equals mc squared, which equates matter and energy, the average human being contains 10 to the 18th power joules of energy. If we were going to harness all of the atomic energy in your body, all of it, it would be 10 to the 18th power joules. Do you know what a joule is? A joule is the amount of energy it takes to move 1 kilogram, about 2.5 pounds, I don't know, 2.2 pounds, something like that. 1 kilogram, 1 meter. Okay? 10 to the 18th power is a quintillion. It's a quintillion. In your body, the average human body, is the energy to move 1 quintillion kilograms, 1 meter. That seems like a lot. Because we were born in stars, we were forged in stars. The things that make up our bodies it comes from the energy of stars. There's no other way to say it. Luminous beings are we, filled with energy, filled with light. Another lesson that Luke learns on Dagobah, which is something that you might not consider a lesson, and some people might argue with me about this, but I'm going to make this point anyways. But Luke sees a vision of his friends in trouble, and he decides, I've got to go help them. And Yoda says, no, you can't. Your training is not yet over. You're not a full Jedi Knight. You can't go risk yourself like this. You've got to complete your training. Do we know what Luke does? He goes. Luke goes to save his friends in spite of both Obi-Wan and Yoda telling him that it is too dangerous and that he will short-circuit his training. They lay the guilt on it, too. They're like, if you go save your friends, you will destroy everything that they are fighting for. And yet he goes anyway. And there are a lot of people who could argue that that's a big mistake that Luke made. And maybe it is, but he made it. Because he had his own compass. In spite of Yoda's wisdom and Obi-Wan's wisdom, Luke knew in his heart that he had to go. And that's sometimes what happens to us. I mean, yes, listen to good advice. But sometimes your compass points you a different direction than all the wisest people in the world. And you have to take that journey. There's a great quote from Sunday in the Park with George, a musical that I love, where one of the characters sings to the other character, "The choice may have been mistaken. The choosing was not." Sometimes the choosing is the thing that is required. Not that it's the right choice or the wrong choice, but it's the choice you make. And Luke completed his journey in an unconventional way, but he made his choice, and then he allowed the Force to guide him. This is something that my dad taught me growing up. Make your choice, and the Lord will guide you. Make the choice, and the Lord will bless you. The Lord will bless, God will bless that choice because you made it. Do you feel the power of that? There is power in action. And it's tough for the Force or God or the Spirit or the universe to guide you when you take no action. If you're in a boat on a river and you're trying to guide your way down the river, you can't be guided if you're not floating down the river. If you're stuck on the side, holding onto the side, there is no guidance to be had. It's only when you take the action, put yourself in the river, and allow the currents to guide you. And maybe you've got an oar to help, right? But it requires action. So be willing to take action. Don't be guided by fear. Fear leads to inaction. Or as Yoda teaches us, fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. So I encourage you to take action and let your actions be guided by love, which is the opposite of fear. The Apostle John writes, "Perfect love casteth out fear," because the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is fear. And love, if you've listened to me speak any time in the last years, I almost always talk about what love is, and it's the feeling realization of oneness. And as you make choices, as you take actions, guided by that feeling realization, by the Force, the thing that binds us together, when you recognize the truth of who you are are not a single green Muppet trying to move an X-Wing fighter. You are a luminous being with the power of the galaxy, the universe, the omniverse at your disposal because of what we call spirit or the Force. So my last piece of advice is to know who you are. Remember who you are in this moment. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. And may the Force be with you. Amen.